is probably going to hurt some feelings, and I apologize in advance, but it has to be done. Today I will be sharing the worst books I read in 2023. If your favorite book is in this video and you completely disagree with me, that's okay. That is the beauty of reading. We all have books that we gravitate towards. We all have books that we love. We all have books that we hate. Let's not take it too seriously, you guys. So I made a whole list of all the books that I just did not like. Ironically, there's 23 books that made the list. I promise you, I did not do that on purpose, but these are the 23 worst books I read in 2023. In this list, I only included books that I rated either 1 star or 2 stars. I didn't include any 3 stars because I don't think any of the books that I rated 3 stars are like the worst books ever. They were just pretty mid. But the first book on this list is The Hunting Party by Lucy Foley. I rated this a 1 star. It's a murder mystery thriller if you're not familiar with it, and I felt like the big twist in the ending was super predictable. Again, I feel like it's the exact same replica as The Guest List, which I guess is her most well-known book, I think. Don't quote me on that, but it just felt like I was reading The Guest List 2.0 and I didn't really enjoy that. And then the second book on this list is Dating Dr. Dill by Nisha Sharma. I rated this a 1 star as well. I found the spice in this book so cringy and the 2 main characters were just so annoying. I did not vibe with this book at all. I should have DNF'd it. Did I DNF this book? I don't remember if I DNF'd it or if I skimmed through it, but I remember hating reading it. I hated the characters. I hated the spiciness. It was just not a vibe. And I was really upset about it because the cover is actually really pretty, and I bought this book on a whim at Barnes & Noble. I really hadn't heard anyone talk about it, so I wanted to give it a chance, and boy do I regret buying this book. I actually ended up selling it, so I kind of got a little bit of my money back. Then we have The Off Limits Rule by Sarah Adams. I gave this a 1 star rating. Did not enjoy this book. I need to stop saying that because I didn't enjoy any of the books on this list, but I don't really remember why I hated this book. I think it was just cringy. Yeah, it was cringy. I feel like Sarah Adams books are not really for me. I read a couple of her books and they were all just meh, and this one was the final straw where I was like, you know what, maybe her books are just not meant for me. I know a lot of people love her writing, so if you are one of those people, continue to read Sarah Adams. That's perfectly fine, but she is just not for me. Okay, and then I have Secretly Yours by Tessa Bailey. I feel like this is the only book I read by Tessa Bailey this year. Last year, I fell in love with her It Happened One Summer series. I loved that book so much. I think I ended up giving a 5-star rating, but then I read I think 2 or 3 more books by her, and I just realized that she is just not an author that I care for. Her writing is just not for me. She writes super spicy books that are super descriptive. Again, if that's your thing, cool, but that's not really why I pick up a romance book. Like, the spice is nice, but it's not the whole reason I read romance, you know? I read a romance book for the romance, not necessarily for the smut. And Secretly Yours just felt so cringy to me. I did finish this book, but it was a struggle, and I did not like the main character. The main character was in her late 20s. She acted like a damn child. The things that she was getting away with would not fly in real life, and after reading Secretly Yours, I realized that, again, Tessa Bailey is just not an author I will ever pick up a book from again. Her writing is just not for me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those first 5 books were all rated 1 star. I think that's pretty good, actually. I read over 100 books and counting in 2023, and only 5 of them were 1 star rating. I think that's a huge accomplishment. That's a huge thing, and I'm actually really happy about that. It makes me feel like I had a pretty good year. The next book is probably going to stir up some drama in the comments, but I did not enjoy If He Had Been With Me by Laura Nolan. I rated this book a 2 star. I know this book is beloved here on BookTube, but I just could not get into it. I felt that the main character was a very pick-me girl, and I get it. It's set in high school, and in high school you think you have your whole life figured out and you feel like you have all the answers and you're right, everyone is wrong. I get it. We've all been there, right? But wow, I could not stand the main character. I mean, it's a sad book because the plot is sad, but I was kind of indifferent to it. I didn't cry. I was just like meh, and I skimmed through a lot of the book because I just couldn't deal with the main character's dialogue. I did not like this girl whatsoever. I'm sorry. I know this book is loved here on BookTube, but not by me. And then we have Addicted to You by Krista and Becca Ritchie. I haven't even told you guys the synopsis of these books. Should I even say the synopsis of these books? I guess I should. If I remember the synopsis of the books, I'll give you a quick rundown. If not, then you won't get a quick rundown. Okay, so Addicted to You follows two main characters. The female main character is addicted to sex. The male main character is addicted to alcohol. They have been fake dating for a number of years. Their whole family thinks that they've been in a relationship, but in reality, they haven't dated and they are just using their relationship as a cover for their addiction. But at one point, they realize that maybe they should try to date because they do have feelings for one another. But since they're both battling with addictions, it's a very toxic relationship. This is another book that is very loved here on BookTube, but I just could not get into it. I ended up giving it a 2-star rating. I don't really like reading books with toxic characters. I don't want a super fluffy book, but I also don't want a super toxic book. Like, I want to meet somewhere in the middle. I don't mind reading about hard topics, but when both characters are super toxic for one another and the whole book is based on how toxic they are, I just can't get behind that. And a lot of you guys have told me that after the 3rd book in the series does get a lot better. But why do I have to sit through 3 books to get to the good part of a series? I don't feel like doing that. So I haven't decided if I want to continue the series yet. Maybe I will, maybe I won't, but this definitely was one of the worst books that I read this year. Okay, then we have Imagine Me by Takehiro Mafi. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. This is the final book in the Shatter Me series. I ended up giving this book a 2-star rating or 2.5. I don't really remember. I lost the nail and I just realized that. What happened to my nail? What the heck? Anyways, let's continue. This is the final book in the Shatter Me series. It was such a letdown, especially since before this book, I was loving the Shatter Me series. I was team Warner and Juliet. I loved Kenji. I loved all the characters. I loved the plots. And 2 out of the 6 books in the series, I believe, were 5-star reads for me. But this one felt like such a letdown. It ended in a way where you feel like you need to read the novella that comes after this book. And I hate when authors do that. Why write a whole novella when you could have just ended the series with a nice little bow with the final book? Why do a cash grab, write a whole novella when you know what your fans want? And I'm pretty sure fans of the Shatter Me series did not ask for how this book ended. Again, it was such a letdown. I expected so much more and I was so bored reading this book. Then we have Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. I ended up giving this book a 2-star rating. I didn't mind the romance part. Like, I really enjoyed the 2 main characters. It was just everything else I had a problem with. I went into this book thinking it was going to be very romance heavy, but it talked about politics a lot. I don't want to read a book about politics. This book focused so heavy on the politics that I was so incredibly bored with it. Again, I didn't mind the romance. I loved the romance, and I actually watched the movie adaptation on Amazon and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was so cute. It was so funny. I loved the actors that they picked for the 2 main characters. And it makes me sad because I really wanted to love that book after hearing so many good things about it, but I just couldn't see past the politics. This next book disappointed me so much, and that book is The Maid by Nita Prose. I went into this book thinking it was going to be a fast-paced murder mystery / thriller. It was not that. It was a very, very slow-paced murder mystery, and I love a good murder mystery, but this one felt as if the author solely focused on the main character's obsession with cleaning. I understand why, and if you read this book, then you'll understand why her fascination with cleanliness and cleaning was such a big deal. But at the same time, I felt like every page the author mentioned how much the main character loved cleaning, and after a while it got really old and I was just like, okay, I get it, she loves to clean. Can we get back to the murder mystery part and can we speed things up? Honestly, this isn't a long book by any means. It's barely 300 pages, but I felt like a whole eternity passed while I was reading this book because of how slow it was. And I think this was rated as Goodreads as thriller, which was a complete lie. It's definitely a lie. This is not even a thriller. Why categorize this as a thriller? It's definitely a slow-paced mystery. If that's your thing, maybe you'll enjoy that, but that definitely is not my thing. And then I have Christmas at Fireside Cabins by Jenny Hill. I wanted to love this book so much because I am a big fan of Jenny Hill's writing. She writes the cutest Hallmark Christmas movies that you can imagine. Her books make me feel like I'm drinking a big cup of hot cocoa. The first part of this book made me feel exactly like that. It made me feel like I was being wrapped in a cozy blanket, but halfway through, it completely took a nosedive. The main character was giving me stalker vibes. Still would recommend this book because if you can see past the main character's stalker tendencies, then you could probably enjoy this book for what it is, a cute little Christmas romance. But I just had such a hard time getting past the female main character's obsession with the male main character and feeling as if she was entitled to his whole life story when they literally just met. I just didn't really see their chemistry together. But if you can see past that, I do think this is a cute little Christmas book. I won't say Christmas romance because I didn't like the romance, but the setting is really pretty. It takes place in a small town, so it is a small town romance during the Christmas season. They do all these fun Christmas activities, so I loved those elements, but the romance was a really big letdown, unfortunately. Okay, and then we have Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. Did I sell that book? I think I did sell it. This is a childhood friends to lovers slash second chance romance. I loved this book for the first like 80% of the book. I was loving it. I was like, yes, I'm normally not a fan of friends to lovers, but this one is doing it for me. I'm here for it. And then it introduced a trope that I absolutely despise. So for that reason, I ended up giving it a 2-star rating. That is like the most infuriating thing to happen when you're really enjoying a book and then the author introduces a trope that you absolutely hate, making you hate the book in its entirety. It's like the worst feeling ever, but that's what happened with that one. And then another book that I really didn't enjoy was For Her Consideration by Amy Spalding. I ended up giving this book a 2-star rating as well. This book was kind of infuriating. The main character was a little infuriating as well. The side characters were infuriating. Everyone just pissed me off in this book. It follows a main character who drops out of her whole friend group after a bad breakup because she thinks that nobody wants to be around her based on what her ex said about her, which makes no sense to me because she knew her friend group longer than she knew her ex, but for some reason she took what her ex said to heart and believed the ex over her friends, and then the friends kind of just let her disappear, didn't even check in on her. I don't know how much time passed, but it was a long ass time for the friends not to even check in and see how she was doing. And then the romance wasn't bad, but at some point the second female main character kind of just stopped showing up in the book and the reasoning was so stupid. I just did not like the conflict that was introduced. I don't know, this book was just a no for me. The cover is absolutely gorgeous though. The next book that I read was A Cross-Country Romance by Courtney Walsh. This one was a 2-star rating as well. It's like enemies to lovers in a way. The female main character hitches a ride with her brother's best friend to get home for the holidays because she's afraid of flying and she waited too long to book the bus/train ticket. I think that's what happened. I read this back in August, so bear with me. I thought it was going to be a cute little Christmas romance, but the main character was so annoying. She hated the male main character with a burning passion. The author just wrote her in a way where she came across as a bitch instead of being grateful that her brother's best friend let her come along his little road trip. And I didn't really vibe with their romance. I had no issues with the male main character, and that's all I have to say about that. I don't really remember much about it. I just remember hating the female main character, and I felt like she was acting like such a child throughout that book. The next book that I read was Love in the Time of Serial Killers by Alicia Thompson. I bought this book mainly because one, the title was very catchy, and second, the cover is absolutely stunning, but it was such a letdown. I thought it was going to be a cute little funny romance book with the main character being obsessed with serial killers, but serial killers were mentioned maybe in the first couple chapters and never again mentioned. The romance was so blah. I don't even remember the male main character's name. That's how blah it was. Like there was no chemistry, there were no sparks, and I was just bored. Yeah, just bored. The fact that I didn't enjoy this next book makes me so sad, but Things We Hide from the Light by Lucy Score. So this is the second book in the Knock 'em Out series. I love the first and third book, which I think I'm in the minority of loving the third book. I thought it was really good. I did not enjoy the second book though. This one actually follows Nash, who was introduced in the first book. It is a small town romance. I guess my problem with this book was it felt like it dragged. It was really slow. I just didn't feel the chemistry between the two main characters characters as much as I felt the chemistry in the first and third books. I don't know what else to say about that. And then the next book was The Inmate by Frida McFadden. This one is a psychological thriller, and normally I'm a big fan of Frida's writing, but this book just felt super predictable. It follows a main character who is a nurse practitioner, and she goes to work at the prison where her ex-boyfriend is serving time for killing their friends when they were in high school. You guys follow? Because that was a lot. The main character was super naive. The twists were so predictable. The ending was super predictable. The writing was just not that great in this book. I don't know if it's one of her earlier books, but I just didn't enjoy it. I feel like that's my reason for every book in this video, that I just didn't enjoy it. But yeah, I just didn't enjoy it. I don't know what else to say. And then the next book was Practice Makes Perfect, which I thought I had, but I guess I don't have, by Sarah Adams. So this is another Sarah Adams book. This was before I read The Off-Limit Rule and before I realized that Sarah Adams writing is just not for me. This is the sequel to When in Rome, or I guess like the spin-off to When in Rome, and it's a small town romance and kind of like opposites attract as well. My problem with this book was that it wanted to be wholesome, but it also wanted to be spice, and I feel like the author never found the right balance between wholesomeness and smut. I just feel like if you're going to write a wholesome book, just make it 100% wholesome, and if you're going to write a smut book, go all in with the spice. Don't go back and forth, because it was giving me whiplash and I just didn't really buy the chemistry between the two main characters, and it was such a disappointing read because I really did enjoy When in Rome, but this one was a complete letdown. And then we have Joey by Sadie Kinclad. This is actually a more recent read. I think I read it early this month. This is part of a mafia romance series. This is actually my first time diving into mafia romances, and I loved the first book, but this second book was just a no for me. It follows the sister of the whole mafia family. So obviously the brothers are overprotective of their little sister, and it's like my best friend's brother romance, and I normally don't mind those. I'm not like a big fan of that trope, but I don't mind them if it's done right. This one just felt incredibly forced, very insta-lovey, insta-lusty, even though they've known each other for years and I'm aware of that, but it just jumped right into the spice and the romance, and I didn't feel like the characters really had anything to lose. It was obvious that the main characters were going to get over their objection to her relationship with their best friend pretty quickly, and then the whole thing was that the main character Joey is a mafia princess, and the way she was just so, I don't know, what's the word? She kind of let Max, the male main character, boss her around, and I really didn't like that. Like, I wanted her character to be super strong, not take any bullshit, including from her man. I just didn't really like their dynamic, and I didn't really enjoy their romance. It was also very spicy. Every single page or every chapter had a spicy scene in it, and after a while that gets so old, and it's like, okay, I get it, they're attracted to one another, they have chemistry, so you're trying to tell me, can something else happen besides them doing it? You know what I mean? Like, I wanted more romance and more challenges for them, and I didn't get that. The next book is The Broken Vows by Katharina Mara. After reading the first couple books in the Windsor series, which I loved, the first book, The Wrong Bride, was a 5-star read for me. This one felt really flat. It's also kind of like Enemies to Lovers. I didn't really like the relationship and everything that they did to one another based on a lot. I just didn't buy it. Then we have Never Never by Colleen Hoover and Taryn Fisher. I was so excited to read this book because the synopsis sounded so intriguing. It's a romance book, but it follows two main characters who suddenly wake up one day and have no memory of their lives or of each other. So that in itself sounded so interesting and very unique from anything else I've ever read, but the execution wasn't there. After a while, the whole memory loss thing got really old, and the whole explanation for why they lost their memory was so stupid. The epilogue was such a letdown. I don't even know why the authors decided to write that epilogue. Might as well have not written one. I don't know, I just felt like the two authors really couldn't decide what they wanted the twist to be, because they kept throwing things out of left field to try to get the reader to be confused, or to try to, I don't even know what they were trying to do, but there were so many plot holes that I was just like, what in the world is going on here? A huge letdown. And kind of for the same reason, One Italian Summer by Rebecca Swirl. One Italian Summer was also a letdown for the same reasons as Never Never. The plot follows a woman who recently lost her mom, so she's obviously struggling with her grief, which is understandable. understandable. They had planned to go to Italy together, but unfortunately her mom dies before they're able to. The main character decides to go to Italy regardless to kind of cope with her mother's passing. In Italy, she actually runs into her mom, but the 30-year-old version of her mom, and that had me hooked. I was like, okay, this sounds like it's going to be such a good book. But then again, the author introduced a trope that I absolutely hate, and then the author really didn't explain. I mean, she kind of did, but not really. She didn't really explain why the main character was able to see the 30-year-old version of her mom, especially since her mom had just passed. Again, so many plot holes. I will say that the scenery in this book is 10 out of 10. The author did a great job of transporting me to Italy and making me feel like I was right there with the main character, but everything else was a no for me. The last book on this list is Winter's Mourn by Mary Stone. This is the last book that I've rated a 2-star rating so far in 2023. I mean, there's still 3 weeks left, but I ended up giving this book a 2-star rating because I, again, had high hopes. It follows a rookie FBI agent who has just given her first murder investigation, and during her very first murder investigation, the serial killer who killed her parents and abducted her younger brother makes contact with her, and I thought that both cases were going to be related and that she was going to have to figure out who killed her parents and abducted her brother, but this book was not that, and it felt like nothing really happened in this book, and the big twist was super predictable. I was able to figure it out halfway through reading this book, and this is actually the first book in a whole series following this FBI agent, and I was reading the reviews of the other books, and it seems like the author just dragged the murder of the main character's parents throughout the entire series, and you don't really get closure for that part of her life till the very last book. I'm not going to read a 10 book or however many books are in this series just to figure out who killed her parents and to get closure for that, especially if the writing isn't really there. And again, another book that I had super high expectations and I was super excited about, and it just let me completely down. So those are the worst books I read in 2023. 23 books for the year 2023. Let me know in the comments what books you read this year that were a huge letdown. I would love to know. Definitely stay tuned for my next video, which will probably be the best books that I read this year. We're going back to being positive. I'm so sorry if this video is negative, but I mean, the title suggested it was going to be negative. If you did enjoy watching this video, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. I would love to have you a part of my channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye guys.